Hello everyone, John AG here. Welcome back to my channel, Aurex. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. In this channel, you will find the real information, real market updates that everyone cannot tell you. So please subscribe to this channel and love you all of my subscribers for your support. And please watch this video till the very end because YouTube will not push my videos to more people. Today is May 5th, 2026, and today I need to tell you a story that the mainstream financial media, the talking heads on cable news, the government press secretaries, and the elite financial columnists absolutely refuse to air. It is a story of a silent heist. It is a global transition of wealth so massive, so calculated, and so ruthlessly efficient that it is happening right under our noses, while we are kept continuously distracted by the daily circus of political theater and fleeting manufactured headlines. Look around you. You feel it, don't you? There is an undeniable tension in the air, a sense of economic vertigo that you cannot quite articulate, but that you experience every single day. You feel it every time you fill up your gas tank and watch the numbers spin out of control. You feel it every time you buy basic groceries for your family and realize your bags are half as full for twice the price. You feel it every time you look at the skyrocketing, inaccessible cost of housing, healthcare, and basic human survival. You are told day in and day out that the economy is resilient. You are told by men in expensive suits that inflation is defeated, that the central banks have executed a perfect soft landing, and that the United States dollar remains the unshakable bedrock of the global financial system. But I want you to ask yourself this one simple question. If everything is so fundamentally sound, why are the architects of this very system quietly panicking? Behind closed doors, behind the heavily guarded biometric walls of Wall Street's most elite institutions, a very different, far darker reality is playing out. The smart money, the insiders, the megabanks, the billionaire family offices who truly pull the invisible strings of the global economy are executing an unprecedented exit strategy. While they go on television and tell you to keep your hard-earned money in their digital checking accounts, while they urge you to buy overvalued tech stocks and decaying negative-yielding treasury bonds, they are quietly, desperately accumulating physical, tangible assets. And one asset in particular is being hoarded at a rate we have never witnessed in modern financial history. Insiders are accumulating 40% more physical silver than they were just a few short years ago. Let that sink in. 40%. This is not a slight portfolio rebalancing. This is a massive, coordinated run on a physical commodity. Why? Why are the architects of the modern fiat regime suddenly scrambling for a metal historically known as the poor man's gold? Because they know exactly what is coming. They know that the collapse of the purchasing power of the dollar is no longer a fringe theory relegated to dark corners of the internet. It is a mathematical certainty. And today, on Aurex, we are going to rip off the veil of this grand illusion. We are going to expose the hidden mechanics of what Wall Street is hiding, why the Eastern Hemisphere is aggressively dumping the dollar, and how the greatest, most violent silver squeeze in human history is actively reshaping the wealth of the entire world. To understand the sheer magnitude of the crisis we are facing right now in 2026, we have to travel back and examine the original sin of modern global finance. We have to look at the exact moment the world was forced into an experimental financial matrix. President Richard Nixon sits behind the Oval Office desk speaking directly to the nation, announcing the temporary suspension of the dollar's convertibility into gold. In 1971, the economic gravity of the world was altered forever. When the United States severed the dollar from its gold anchor, money ceased to be tied to anything real, physical, or scarce. It became fiat. It became an illusion backed entirely by debt, sustained only by the blind faith of the people using it and the military might of the government issuing it. For the last 55 years, we have lived inside a system that demands infinite, exponential growth on a planet with finite resources. Whenever the natural business cycle threatened to clear out bad debt and malinvestment, whenever a crisis emerged, the answer from the central banking cartels was always identical: print more currency. Whether it was the bursting of the dot-com bubble, the catastrophic 2008 great financial crisis, or the unprecedented global economic freezes of 2020, the central banks simply created trillions of new dollars out of thin air. They flooded the global financial arteries with unbacked currency units. They disguised this ultimate act of counterfeiting with complex, academic-sounding terms. They called it quantitative easing. They called it liquidity injections. They called it asset purchasing programs. But let me tell you what it actually is, stripped of all its Wall Street jargon. It is theft. It is the silent, insidious, continuous confiscation of your life's energy. When a central bank prints trillions of new currency units, the dollars you already hold in your bank account, the dollars you traded hours, weeks, and years of your life to earn, lose their value. It takes more of those continually weakened, diluted dollars to buy the exact same loaf of bread, the exact same gallon of milk, the exact same plot of land. Inflation is not an accident of nature. It is not caused by greedy grocery store owners or supply chain hiccups. Inflation is a deliberate, mathematical, unavoidable consequence of a dying fiat regime trying to inflate away its insurmountable debt. And Wall Street knows this better than anyone because they are the ones who wrote the rules of the game. They operate on an economic principle known as the Cantillon Effect. Listen closely to this because understanding this concept is the key to understanding why the rich get infinitely richer while the working class is ground into dust. The Cantillon Effect explains how newly created money enters an economy. The people positioned closest to the money printer, the massive commercial banks, the hedge funds, the massive corporate conglomerates, the political elite, receive this newly printed cheap money first. They get it before the prices of goods and services have had a chance to react and rise. They take this practically free liquidity and they immediately deploy it. They buy up hard, scarce assets, real estate, large corporations, productive farmland, and commodities. By the time that newly printed money finally trickles down through the system to you and me, to the working class citizen receiving a nominal wage increase, the prices of everything around us have already doubled. You are left holding a currency that buys half of what it used to, while the elite have astronomically enriched themselves by riding the wave of inflation that they themselves created. But what happens when the architects of the system realize their foundation is crumbling? What happens when the debt spiral reaches an escape velocity that no algorithm, no policy tweak, and no Federal Reserve chairman can control? That is exactly where we are in 2026. The interest payments on the United States national debt have gone parabolic. They are consuming the federal budget. Foreign nations are openly balking at financing our deficits. The illusion is shattering in real time, and the insiders are quietly, methodically running for the exits. If you truly want to know the direction of the global economy, do not listen to what the billionaires preach on television. Watch what they do with their own capital. Over the last 36 months, we have been documenting a silent bank run. This is not a traditional run on the banks where retail depositors line up around the block in a panic to withdraw paper cash. No, this is infinitely more sophisticated. This is a run by elite institutions withdrawing physical, tangible wealth from the fraudulent paper markets. For decades, the price of precious metals, specifically silver and gold, has been heavily, artificially manipulated by paper derivatives on major exchanges like the COMEX in New York and the LBMA in London. It is a brilliant, entirely legal shell game. For every single ounce of physical silver that actually sits in a guarded vault, there are hundreds of paper contracts claiming ownership of that exact same ounce. It is a gigantic game of musical chairs played with imaginary metal. Wall Street bullion banks have generated billions of dollars in profits by shorting paper silver, systematically suppressing its price to maintain the grand illusion that the US dollar is strong and invincible. Because they understand that if gold and silver are allowed to break free, if they are allowed to find their true free market value, they act as the ultimate deafening alarm bell. A skyrocketing precious metals market exposes the catastrophic, undeniable failure of the fiat currency. But the elite have a terrifying secret. They know that the era of paper manipulation is reaching its mathematical conclusion. You can print paper contracts all day long. You can invent digital silver on a computer screen until your fingers bleed. But you cannot print an atom of physical silver. You cannot conjure it out of thin air. Institutions, massive family offices, and megabanks have shifted their strategy. They are no longer just playing the paper game, they are demanding delivery. Since the early 2010s, and accelerating violently into 2025 and 2026, we have tracked insiders hoarding an estimated 40% more physical silver than their historical baselines. They are relentlessly draining the COMEX registered inventories. They are pulling the physical metal entirely out of the interconnected financial system and locking it away in private, unencumbered, highly secured vaults outside the reach of the banking sector. Why? Why are they executing this massive physical drain while simultaneously encouraging the retail public to buy their paper exchange-traded funds and digital crypto tokens? Because they know that when the music finally stops, when the true panic sets in, paper contracts will inevitably default. Force majeure clauses will be activated. The exchange will hand you cash, worthless, hyperinflated fiat currency, instead of the metal you thought you owned. When the dollar faces its final catastrophic reckoning, the only thing that will matter in this world is who holds the physical, unencumbered asset in the palm of their hand. They are front-running the collapse. They are building a financial arc of biblical proportions, and I assure you, they are not saving a seat for the working class. But the financial manipulation is only half the story. If you think the monetary angle is terrifying, wait until you hear the industrial reality. The insiders aren't just buying silver because it has been the ultimate form of money for 5,000 years. They are accumulating it because of an unprecedented, terrifying supply and demand shock that is unfolding across the globe right now. Silver is a remarkably schizophrenic asset. It is a precious, monetary metal, deeply embedded in human history as a store of value. But it is also the most vital, irreplaceable industrial metal on the face of the earth. It is the most electrically conductive, thermally conductive, and reflective element known to modern science. There is no synthetic substitute. Look at the trajectory of the world today. We are currently undergoing the largest, most aggressive technological and energy transition in the history of human civilization. And every single pillar of this transition, every green energy initiative, every technological leap forward, requires massive, irreplaceable, mind-boggling amounts of physical silver. Let's look at the hard, undeniable data. Consider the solar energy sector. Throughout 2024 and 2025, the global solar photovoltaic industry consumed an ungodly amount of silver. The world is aggressively transitioning to newer, high-efficiency solar cells, such as TOPCon and heterojunction technologies. These advanced panels are far more efficient, but there is a catch. They require significantly more silver paste per panel than the older technologies they are replacing. Solar manufacturing alone is now devouring nearly 30% of the entire global annual silver supply, and that number is rising exponentially. Consider the automotive industry. A traditional internal combustion engine vehicle uses perhaps 15 to 28 grams of silver for its basic electrical contacts and switches. An electric vehicle? It is a rolling computer. It requires nearly double, sometimes triple that amount, utilizing up to 50 grams or more just to handle the massive electrical loads, the complex autonomous driving sensors, the intricate battery management systems, and the pervasive touchscreens. With governments worldwide mandating the phase-out of gas-powered cars, the silver demand from the EV sector is a runaway freight train. Now, consider the ultimate wildcard, the sector that Wall Street foresaw before anyone else, the artificial intelligence revolution. The explosion of AI has required a staggering, almost incomprehensible build-out of hyperscale data centers across the globe. These facilities are the physical brains of AI. The processors running these vast neural networks operate at blistering speeds and generate extreme, dangerous levels of heat. They require massive, uninterrupted electrical throughput and advanced, highly specialized cooling systems. Silver is absolutely critical in the high-end electronics, the specialized semiconductors, and the thermal management components that make the AI revolution physically possible. And we cannot forget the defense sector. As global geopolitical tensions boil over, the military-industrial complex is operating at maximum capacity. Every single Tomahawk cruise missile, every advanced fighter jet, every surveillance satellite, every precision-guided munition requires hundreds of ounces of silver to guarantee absolute, fail-proof electrical connectivity under extreme conditions. When a missile is launched, there is no margin for error. They do not use cheap copper substitutes. They use pure silver. Now I want you to step back and do the math. Industrial demand for silver has utterly shattered all-time records for 5 consecutive years. By the time we entered 2025, the overall global silver market plunged into its 5th consecutive year of a severe structural supply deficit. We are physically consuming hundreds of millions of ounces more than we are mining out of the ground, year after year after year. Above-ground accessible stockpiles are being decimated. Recycling cannot even begin to close the massive gap. And here is the truly terrifying part about silver mining. You cannot simply flip a switch and mine more of it. Roughly 70% of all silver produced globally is mined merely as a byproduct of extracting other base metals like zinc, copper, and lead. If the global economy slows down and the demand for copper drops, silver production drops right alongside it, regardless of how high the price of silver goes. It is perfectly, inelastically trapped. This is the 40% secret. Insiders are accumulating 40% more silver because they see the catastrophic collision course ahead. They clearly see the massive incoming monetary demand from a collapsing dollar crashing headfirst into a historic, insurmountable industrial deficit. It is the ultimate financial powder keg. The math is inescapable, and the fuse is already burning down to the wire. Now, take a step back and look at the vast global chessboard. Because while the Western financial elites are manipulating paper markets to build their lifeboats, the global East has launched a full-scale, unapologetic financial rebellion. For nearly a century, the United States dollar has held unquestioned, absolute hegemony over global trade. Through the brilliant establishment of the Petrodollar agreement in the 1970s, the entire world was essentially forced to hold massive reserves of US dollars simply to buy the oil necessary to power their nations. This artificial global demand for the dollar allowed the United States to run massive deficits, print endless currency, and effectively export its inflation to the rest of the developing world. But Washington, in its hubris, made a fatal, irreversible miscalculation. They weaponized the world reserve currency. When the United States and its allies began aggressively utilizing the SWIFT payment system as a weapon of foreign policy, when they brazenly froze hundreds of billions of dollars in sovereign reserves belonging to foreign nations, they sent a chilling, unmistakable message to every single country on Earth. The message was clear. If you do not bow completely to our geopolitical demands, your national treasury, your life savings, can be digitally erased with a single keystroke in Washington. The reaction from the East was swift, brutal, and historic. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and its newly integrated energy-rich partners like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, and Egypt, drew a permanent line in the sand. De-dollarization is no longer a futuristic buzzword or a distant threat. Here in 2026, it is a daily operational reality. China and Russia are actively conducting the vast, overwhelming majority of their massive bilateral trade completely outside the dollar system, settling their accounts in yuan and rubles. The historic bedrock of American financial dominance, Saudi Arabia, is openly selling oil in alternative currencies, effectively driving a stake through the heart of the petrodollar system. These nations have aggressively developed their own alternative payment messaging systems, completely bypassing Western financial surveillance and control. They are building a parallel global economy. But what is backing this massive new economic bloc? What are they utilizing to build trust among nations that historically have deep suspicions of one another? They are replacing fiat paper with real, tangible money. Central banks across the East have been aggressively repatriating their gold and buying new bullion at a record-shattering, relentless pace. They are adding thousands upon thousands of tons to their sovereign reserves, systematically draining the West of its physical gold. And moving silently right behind gold, massive quantities of physical silver are being quietly accumulated by sovereign wealth funds, state-owned enterprises, and Eastern billionaires. They deeply understand the ultimate immutable golden rule of global geopolitics. He who holds the physical gold and the physical silver makes the rules. As the BRICS nations move definitively toward a multipolar financial world backed by hard commodities, the artificial, forced demand for the US dollar is evaporating into thin air. Think about the catastrophic consequences. There are tens of trillions of US dollars circulating overseas right now. As these nations stop using the dollar for trade, they have no reason to hold those dollars. Those trillions of currency units are going to come flooding back to American shores. They will bid up the price of everything. And when that tsunami of repatriated currency hits the domestic economy, the inflationary firestorm we have seen so far will look like a mild breeze compared to the hurricane that is coming. This brings me to the absolute most important part of this broadcast. Because none of this macroeconomic data, none of the COMEX charts or geopolitical shifts matter if we do not intimately understand the devastating human collateral of this engineered collapse. Economics is not just a collection of sterile charts and mathematical formulas. Economics is human life. It is the time, the sweat, the stress, and the ultimate sacrifice you trade every single day for a paycheck. I want to tell you about a man named David. I sat down and spoke with him just last week. David is 68 years old. He worked in heavy manufacturing for 40 straight years, putting in grueling 50-hour weeks, missing his children's baseball games, sacrificing his body to build a life for his family. He did absolutely everything the system told him to do. He lived below his means. He aggressively saved his money. He put his faith into a conventional pension and a traditional bond portfolio. He deeply trusted the government and the banking institutions to protect the purchasing power of his life's work. Today, in 2026, David is staring into the abyss of a retirement that is rapidly turning to ash. The $400,000 he painstakingly, agonizingly saved over 4 decades can barely cover his basic living expenses, his skyrocketing healthcare premiums, and the exploding property taxes on a home he already paid off. His so-called safe bond portfolio is yielding returns that are fundamentally, deeply negative when adjusted for the real-world cost of living. He sat across from me, his hands shaking slightly, looked at me with profound exhaustion in his eyes, and asked, "John, what did I do wrong? I played by all the rules." I had to look David in the eye and deliver the most brutal truth a man can hear. "David, you didn't do anything wrong. You played your heart out in a game where the rules were secretly, maliciously changed by the people running the casino." And it is not just the older generation being decimated. Look at the young people. Look at Elena and Marcus, a couple in their late 20s I recently interviewed. They both have college degrees. They both work full-time professional jobs. Yet they are entirely locked out of the housing market, trapped in a relentless, soul-crushing cycle of skyrocketing rent. The down payment they tried to save 3 years ago is now mathematically insufficient, as housing prices have been pushed into the stratosphere by institutional investors buying up single-family homes with cheap, borrowed Wall Street money. They feel entirely robbed of their future, living in a state of permanent financial anxiety. This is the deeply tragic, hidden reality of a fiat currency collapse. It does not destroy the ultra-wealthy. The elite are completely insulated. They own the land. They own the producing corporations. They own the energy pipelines. They own the physical silver and gold. A currency collapse specifically surgically targets and destroys the middle class. It completely wipes out the pensioners. It crushes the young families who are desperately trying to build a foundation. It steals the hope and the future from the very people whose physical labor built the infrastructure of the nation. The invisible tax of inflation is the most regressive, punishing, and deeply immoral tax ever devised by human institutions. It silently steals wealth from the poor and the working class and funnels it directly upward to the apex of the financial elite, all without a single piece of legislation being voted on by the public. Wall Street is desperately hiding this reality. They are using their media conglomerates to keep you distracted with political outrage, cultural division, and celebrity trivialities. Because if the masses truly woke up to the mathematical reality of this historic theft, the entire system would break down overnight. They need you to stay asleep. They need you to keep your wealth locked in their depreciating paper instruments. They need you to remain a willing, docile participant in the grand fiat illusion while they aggressively board the lifeboats and lock the doors behind them. But you are here. You are listening to this. You are not going to be a casualty of this system. Knowledge is the ultimate impenetrable weapon against financial tyranny. You see the chessboard. You recognize the pieces. You understand exactly why the rules are rigged. If the most powerful, connected Wall Street insiders are aggressively accumulating 40% more physical silver to protect themselves from the unavoidable death of the fiat dollar, you possess the power to do the exact same thing. Silver remains, for this brief, fleeting moment in time, the most criminally undervalued physical asset on the face of the earth. It is the absolute Achilles heel of the global fiat banking matrix. It is, and always has been, the people's money. Unlike gold, which is priced in the thousands of dollars and is tightly, heavily controlled by massive central banks, silver is uniquely accessible to the everyday working person. It is highly divisible. It is completely private. It is tangible, heavy wealth that carries absolutely zero counterparty risk. When you hold a 1-ounce physical silver coin in your hand, you are holding a piece of undeniable history. You are holding a critical, irreplaceable industrial necessity. And most importantly, you are holding a physical shield against the relentless machinery of inflation. Nobody can print it on a whim. Nobody can hack it with a computer virus. Nobody can downgrade its credit rating. It requires human labor, heavy machinery, and massive energy to pull it from the earth, and that intrinsic value can never be inflated away by a corrupt politician or a greedy central banker. We are living through the greatest, most volatile transfer of wealth in human history. I need you to remember this fundamental law of economics. Wealth is never truly destroyed, it merely changes hands. In times of profound crisis, wealth aggressively transfers from those who blindly hold the dying, unbacked paper of the old paradigm directly into the hands of those who possess the foresight to hold the hard, tangible assets of the new paradigm. The collapse of the global dollar system is not the end of the world. It is simply the violently chaotic end of a 50-year illusion. And out of the ashes of this unsustainable, debt-based nightmare, a new, grounded reality is being born. It is a reality anchored in tangible value, in physical production, and in sound, honest money. Do your own independent research. Understand the vast macroeconomic picture. Stop placing your blind trust in the institutions and the media conglomerates that have repeatedly, provably lied to you to protect their own interests. Take immediate action to protect your family, secure your purchasing power, and position yourself firmly on the right side of history before the window of opportunity violently slams shut forever. The great physical silver squeeze is not just another market event or a fleeting trading opportunity. It is a fundamental, ground-up financial revolution. And the elites sitting in their penthouses are absolutely terrified that you are finally catching on to their game. Thank you for watching Aurex. If this video opened your eyes, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive. The algorithms want this information buried, so I rely on you, my community, to share this video with your friends, your family, and anyone who needs to wake up. Love you, all of my subscribers, for your continued support. I am John AG, and I will see you on the right side of the reset. Stay strong, stay aware. The single, low-frequency bass note hums one final time, echoing deeply into the silence before fading out completely.